I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and please drop the name of your city in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon filled my dining room that Thanksgiving evening, the kind of warmth that used to make me feel like everything in the world was exactly as it should be. My son Daniel had set the table himself: candles, the good china, the linen napkins his father and I received as a wedding gift 40 years ago. I remember thinking, as I carried the gravy boat from the kitchen, that we looked like a photograph of a happy family. We almost were one. There were 7 of us at the table. Daniel's wife, my daughter-in-law Vivian, sat at the far end, her silk blouse the color of champagne, her dark hair pinned back in a way that cost more than my first car payment. She had been quiet all afternoon, which I had learned over 2 years of knowing her meant she was either bored or building towards something. She was building towards something, I had just mentioned, while passing the sweet potatoes, that I had decided to step back from taking on new consulting work. 31 years practicing contract law had worn my knees, my back, and frankly my patience for conference calls down to almost nothing. I was 62. I had earned the right to read on my porch. Vivian set down her wine glass with a small, careful click. "Oh, that's right," she said, her voice carrying that particular sweetness that sounds like honey and lands like a slap. "You've retired. Again." She smiled at Daniel's colleague across the table, then back at me. "Tell me, how does it feel to finally be irrelevant? I mean genuinely, at your age, with nothing left to contribute. Does it feel like relief? Or just like giving up?" The table went silent, the way rooms go silent before a storm. Daniel stared at his plate. The colleague's wife looked at the centerpiece. My friend Patricia, who I had invited because she had nowhere to go for the holiday, looked at me with eyes that said she would follow whatever lead I gave her. I set the gravy boat down slowly. I folded my hands in my lap the way I used to before cross-examination, when I needed every word I said next to be exactly right. "Irrelevant," I repeated, letting the word sit for a moment. That's an interesting choice of words from someone whose interior design business has never actually completed a paying project. The champagne color drained from Vivian's face so fast it was almost medically impressive. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." I picked up my fork. "And while we're having this conversation, I'd like to mention that I spoke with my accountant on Wednesday. There are some discrepancies in my investment account I'd like to discuss with you. At your convenience." "Of course." She recovered quickly, I'll give her that. She laughed, light and dismissive, and steered the conversation toward someone else's life. But I watched her hand reach under the table and squeeze Daniel's knee. And I watched my son look away from me. And I understood that the evening was only the beginning. That night, after everyone had gone home and the dishes were done, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of water and my laptop. And I started doing what 31 years of contract law had made second nature to me. I read the fine print. The investment account in question was one my late husband Gerald had set up for us 17 years ago. A modest but carefully managed portfolio index funds, a few bonds, the kind of patient, unglamorous wealth building that Gerald had believed in quietly and completely. After he died 3 years ago, I had updated the account access to include online banking through my phone. Vivian had helped me do it. She had sat beside me at this same kitchen table, close enough that I could smell her perfume, and she had walked me through every step with the patient, slightly condescending tone she reserved for moments when she wanted me to feel fortunate she was there. I had thought at the time that it was kind of her. I pulled up the account statements now and began reading backward through 18 months of history. It took me 40 minutes to find the first one. A transfer of $800 to an account labeled VLD Design Group LLC. 3 weeks later, another one. $1,200, then $1,500. Then, as the months passed, the amounts grew like a tide, coming in $3,000, $5,000, $8,000. Until I reached 11 months ago, when a single transfer of $22,000 had left my account in a single afternoon. I sat back and looked at the ceiling, Gerald used to say that the most dangerous lies are the ones told incrementally, because by the time you notice the pattern, you've already lost the thread of where it started. He had meant it about contract language. He had no idea it would apply to our daughter-in-law. I opened a new document and began to write down everything I knew. VLD Design Group LLC, Vivian's initials. An LLC I had never heard of, never been told about, never agreed to fund. By the time I finished tallying the transfers, I had given, without knowing it, a total of $64,000 to a company that existed, as far as I could tell, only as a name. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I was thinking. In the morning, I called my accountant, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Dolores, who had been managing my finances for 12 years and who I trusted with my life. I need you to pull everything, I told her. Not just the investment account. Everything. She called me back at 2 in the afternoon and she didn't waste time. There are 3 accounts I'm seeing, Margaret. Your investment account, your secondary savings, and something attached to the secondary savings I don't have a record of you opening. A joint account listed under your name and a Vivian Lorne Dawson. I wrote the name down even though I already knew it. I didn't open a joint account with my daughter-in-law. Dolores was quiet for a moment. I didn't think so. How much is in it? $11,000 currently. But based on the transfer history, it's been used as a pass-through. Money comes in from your accounts, stays briefly, moves out to external accounts. The largest outflow we can see went to an offshore account about 4 months ago. $40,000. I thanked her. I ended the call. I sat very still for 60 seconds, the way Gerald used to when he needed to decide something important. Then I picked up the phone and called my son. He arrived at my house that evening, looking the way he'd looked since marrying Vivian, slightly apologetic, slightly distracted, like a man perpetually catching up to a conversation that had already moved on without him. He was a good architect. He had his father's eyes and his father's fundamental decency, and I had watched Vivian chip away at both for 2.5 years. I need to show you something, I said, sitting him down at the table. I walked him through everything. The transfers, the LLC, the joint account he hadn't known existed, the $40,000 currently sitting somewhere offshore. He said nothing for a long time. She told me the business was struggling, he said finally. She said she was figuring out the financing. She used mine. You could have misread the statements, Mom. Sometimes these accounts, Daniel, I said his name gently but clearly, the way I used to when he was 12 and heading toward a decision I could see would hurt him. I practiced contract law for 31 years. I have read more financial documents than most bank auditors. I did not misread anything. He rubbed his face. She said you'd do this. She said you'd try to make me choose. I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to look. He looked. He sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours, going through everything I'd compiled, and I watched the moment when he stopped defending her and started actually reading. It was quiet and painful, and I was proud of him for letting it happen. The LLC, he said at one point. What does it actually do? As far as I can tell, nothing. There's a website very beautiful, very professional with photographs of interior design projects. I ran a reverse image search on 4 of them this afternoon. 3 are from a stock photo site. 1 is from a design magazine from 2019. He set the paper down. She's been telling people she has clients. Showing me photos. I thought, I know what you thought. He was quiet again. Then, what do we do? First, we talk to a lawyer. Not me, an independent attorney with no connection to either of us. Then we talk to the bank about the unauthorized account. And then we decide how to handle the rest. The rest? He repeated. There's more to find, Daniel. There always is. He nodded. And this time, I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in a long time, not the passive, accommodating look Vivian had trained him into, but something older and quieter, the look of a man deciding to stop drifting and start swimming. The next morning, I did what I should have done 2 years earlier. I called my old colleague Arthur Simmons, who had spent 28 years as a forensic accountant before retiring to a house in Savannah that his wife insisted on. Arthur was the kind of man who noticed things other people considered too small to see. "Send me what you have," he said when I explained. "Give me 3 days." While I waited, I did my own research. Vivian's design company had a social media presence, elegant photographs, glowing testimonials, the kind of polished digital facade that takes either real success or serious effort to construct. I printed every post with a date. I ran image searches. I looked up the testimonials against real business directories. None of the testimonials matched any registered business or person I could verify. 2 of the client names appeared nowhere on the internet except in Vivian's comments section. On the second day, my friend Patricia called me. "I've been thinking about your Thanksgiving dinner," she said. "About what Vivian said to you. And I remembered something I probably should have told you sooner." She paused. "About 3 months ago, I ran into a woman at the garden center. Carol Pemberton. You might know her. She and her husband just moved back from Raleigh. She mentioned she'd hired a local designer to redo her study, said she'd paid a substantial deposit, and then the woman had gone quiet, stopped returning calls. I didn't make the connection until now." I wrote down Carol Pemberton's name. Carol was not difficult to find. She was gracious on the phone and furious in the quiet, controlled way that people are furious when they have been embarrassed by their own trust. She came highly recommended by a mutual acquaintance, Carol told me. Very professional, very charming. I gave her a deposit of $4,000 in January. She sent me 3 emails about fabric samples, and then nothing. I assumed she'd gone out of business. A pause. "Is she your daughter-in-law?" "She is." "Oh, Margaret, I'm so sorry. I told her I might need her to speak to an attorney. She said she would be available whenever needed." On the 3rd day, Arthur called. "I've traced the offshore account," he said without preamble. "It's a digital bank registered in a jurisdiction that technically requires identity verification, but the verification on this account was done using a scanned ID. The name on the account is Margaret Dolores Hartwell." He paused. "Is that you?" I closed my eyes. "That's my full legal name, yes. Someone opened a financial account using your identity, Margaret. That's identity theft. That's a federal crime." I thanked him. I sat with it. Then I called Daniel. He came over that night and I told him everything. I watched him go through the same quiet journey he had 2 days ago, but faster this time. The disbelief collapsing under the weight of compounding evidence. He asked me if I was all right. I told him I was fine, which was mostly true. He asked me what I wanted to do. "I want to do this correctly," I said. "No confrontations. No warnings. We gather everything. We present it to the right people. And then we let the law do what the law is designed to do." He nodded. Then he said, "I have access to her office computer. She uses it for the business. If there's more evidence there, get what you can find. Legally. Take photographs of anything relevant." He called me the next morning from his car. His voice was different, flatter. The way voices get when a person has seen something they cannot unsee. "There's a folder on her desktop," he said, labeled Client Contracts. I thought it would be her design business. But Mom, they're not design contracts. They're documents with your signature on them. Bank authorization forms. A power of attorney. A document that looks like an amendment to your investment account beneficiary. I set my coffee cup down. "None of those have my signature," I said. "Those are forgeries." He was quiet for a moment. "I know. I have your handwriting framed in my office, Mom. The card you wrote me when I graduated from architecture school. I looked at it last night after I saw these documents." His voice tightened. "It's not even close. We went to an attorney that afternoon. Patricia Kellerman was 60 years old, precise, and had spent her career in financial litigation. She reviewed everything we had brought, Arthur's analysis, the transfer records, the photographs Daniel had taken, Carol Pemberton's account, the social media documentation. and she looked at us with the calm expression of someone who had seen this exact shape of betrayal before. "This is substantial," she said. "You have identity theft, wire fraud, unauthorized financial account creation, forgery of legal documents, and what appears to be a pattern of client fraud through a fraudulent business entity. That covers both state and federal territory. What do we do first?" Daniel asked. "First, you freeze every account you have access to, Margaret, and report the unauthorized joint account to your bank's fraud division today. Second, I file an emergency motion to have any documents bearing your forged signature declared null and void. Third, we contact the district attorney's office." She looked at Daniel. "And you need to understand that your wife is going to be arrested. This is not a situation that ends with a conversation." He nodded slowly. "I know. Are you prepared for that?" He looked at me, then back at the attorney. "I've been prepared for it since I looked at that folder. I just didn't want to see it before." The bank fraud department was efficient and thorough. A specialist named Gregory walked me through the process of locking down my accounts, issuing new credentials, and flagging the unauthorized joint account for investigation. He confirmed that the offshore account opened in my name had triggered an automatic flag 3 weeks ago that had not yet been reviewed. "You caught this early enough to limit the damage significantly," he told me. "In our experience, these situations can go on for years without detection." "I have 31 years of reading contracts," I said. "I should have read my own sooner." He was kind enough not to agree out loud. That evening, Vivian came to my door. She had dressed carefully for it, understated, composed, carrying a bottle of wine she had no intention of sharing. She smiled when I opened the door, that practiced, gracious smile I had watched her deploy on strangers and clients, and anyone she was planning to manage. "Teresa, we need to." "It's Margaret," I said. "You've called me by the wrong name twice in 2 years, Vivian. I've never corrected you before. I'm correcting you now." She recalibrated smoothly. "Of course. Margaret, can we talk?" "We can talk at the door." She absorbed that. Adjusted. "I know you're upset about what I said at Thanksgiving. It was insensitive. I was stressed about the business, and "Which business?" I said. "The one with the fraudulent client testimonials? Or the one funded with $64,000 transferred out of my accounts without my knowledge?" The wine bottle didn't move, but her grip on it tightened. "Those transfers were loans you agreed to. You said yourself you wanted to support my career. I said I was proud of Daniel for marrying someone ambitious. I never authorized a single transfer." I held her gaze. "I also never opened a joint savings account with you. I never granted you power of attorney. I never amended my beneficiary designations. And whoever signed those documents in my name, that's a federal crime. Vivian." The composure slipped for just a moment, then reassembled itself. "You're confused. You've been forgetting things. I remember every document I've ever signed. That is the one skill I will take to my grave, completely intact." I opened the door a few more inches. "I suggest you contact an attorney. Any further communication should go through mine." She tried 2 more approaches, tears, then a lower, colder register that sounded like a warning before she left. I watched her walk to her car from the window. She sat in it for a long moment without starting the engine. That night, I called Daniel and told him Vivian had come by. He was quiet. "She hasn't come home yet," he said. "I know. I've been sitting here thinking about the first time she said something cruel to you. The comment at your birthday dinner last year about how you'd gotten confused about the restaurant reservation. I thought she was just having a bad day." He exhaled. "She was testing something, wasn't she? Seeing if she could introduce the idea that you were forgetful. That's my read, yes." She was laying groundwork. His voice was controlled, deliberate. The voice of a man working through something painful with his whole attention. In case anyone ever questioned the documents, she could say you'd been confused for years, that you'd agreed to things and forgotten. "It's a sophisticated approach," I said. "And it might have worked with someone who didn't keep records. Do you keep records of everything? Every document I've signed in the last 20 years is organized in a fireproof cabinet in my home office, with the date, the context, and the parties involved written on the cover page. A beat. Your father thought I was excessive. I thought I was simply careful. For the first time in weeks, Daniel laughed a small, tired sound, but real. Thank God for your excessive record-keeping, Mom. Yes, I said. Thank God. Vivian retained an attorney, which I had expected. What I had not expected was the nature of the counter-argument she chose. 3 days after my conversation with her at the door, Patricia Kellerman called me with news that Vivian had filed a petition claiming cognitive decline on my part, alleging that I had made financial decisions in a confused state, that I had trouble remembering agreements, that Daniel had been unduly influencing my affairs. I sat with that for exactly 30 seconds. Then I called my physician, Dr. Anita Ramos, who had been my doctor for 14 years and who possessed approximately 0 patience for nonsense. I explained the situation. She arranged for a full cognitive evaluation within 48 hours. I scored in the 93rd percentile for my age group on every measure. Your memory, Dr. Ramos told me afterward, is, if anything, better than most people 15 years younger than you. I'll put that in writing. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in January, gray and cold and very still. I wore a charcoal suit that I had worn to more courtrooms than I could count. And I walked in feeling, for the first time since that Thanksgiving dinner, entirely like myself. Vivian sat with her attorney, composed and subdued in a way that communicated careful performance. She had dressed to look younger, less polished than usual, an attempt to humanize herself to the judge. I had seen the tactic before. I had seen it fail before. Our side called Arthur Simmons, who laid out the forensic financial evidence with the methodical patience of someone who had built expert witness testimony for 3 decades. He was meticulous, clear, and devastating. He traced every transfer, every account, every forgery. When Vivian's attorney cross-examined him, he remained perfectly calm and corrected her twice on fundamental factual points. Dr. Ramos testified to my cognitive health. Patricia called the handwriting expert, who detailed in patient technical language exactly how and why the signatures on Vivian's documents did not belong to me. Then Patricia called Carol Pemberton, who had driven 2 hours to be there and who described, in the precise and dignified tone of a woman who had been defrauded and was finished being embarrassed about it, how she had paid $4,000 to VLD Design Group LLC and never received any work in return. By the time I took the stand, the shape of what had happened was already clear to everyone in the room. I stated the facts simply and directly. I did not dramatize. I did not appeal. I presented the timeline, the documents, the evidence, and I answered every question put to me with the clarity of someone who had 31 years of practice keeping the truth from being muddied by anything less important than itself. Vivian's attorney made her arguments. They were competent, and they were not enough. The judge denied the petition. She issued a protective order. She referred the matter to the district attorney with a note of her own attached. Vivian was arrested in the courthouse parking lot. I did not watch, but Daniel did, and he told me about it later that evening at my kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. She looked at me, he said, right before they put her in the car. Like she expected me to do something. What did you do? Nothing. He looked up. I just stood there. Is that awful? No, I said. That's appropriate. He was quiet for a while. Outside, snow had started. The first real snow of the year. Soft and indifferent. I refilled his mug. The bank called this morning, I told him. The $40,000 in the offshore account is in the process of being recovered. Gregory said, It's not guaranteed, but likely. He nodded. I'm sorry, Daniel. I know this isn't only about money for you. No. He turned the mug slowly between his hands. I keep going back over things. Moments I thought were normal that weren't. Conversations that made sense at the time and don't now. He shook his head. I feel like I have to learn how to trust my own memory again. That takes time, I said. But your memory is fine. What she did was design things to look like what you expected to see. That's different from you failing to notice. He looked at me. Did you know? Before Thanksgiving? Did you suspect before then? I considered this honestly. I had a feeling. The way you sometimes have a feeling before you can justify it. Small things that didn't quite fit together. But no, I didn't know until that dinner, when she said what she said and I realized she had stopped being careful. Why do you think she stopped being careful? Because she had been doing it long enough that she felt safe. That's when most people make their first real mistake. When they've gotten away with something for so long, they stop believing they won't always get away with it. He was quiet again. Then, she would have kept going, wouldn't she? If you hadn't said what you said at the table, probably. The offshore transfer happened 6 weeks before Thanksgiving. I think she was beginning to plan an exit. She would have moved the money, closed out the accounts, and found a reason for the marriage to end that put the confusion on my side. By the time anyone sorted it out, she would have been difficult to find. He absorbed that. We almost lost you, he said softly. I almost let her convince me that you were the problem. You didn't, I said. That's what matters. The legal process was slow and thorough the way justice often is when it's working properly. Vivian was charged with wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and financial exploitation, the last charge carrying enhanced penalties given my age. Her attorney negotiated. The DA declined to negotiate much. In the end, she pled guilty to 4 counts and was sentenced to 7 years with the possibility of parole after 4. Carol Pemberton received her $4,000 back, plus damages. $61,000 of the $64,000 Vivian had taken from my accounts was recovered. The remaining $3,000 I decided to stop thinking about, because at some point the energy required to pursue it costs more than the amount itself. Daniel filed for divorce before the sentencing. He was the one who told me, over the phone, with a steadiness in his voice that hadn't been there a year ago. Are you all right? I asked him. I think I will be, he said. I think I'm going to be better than I've been in a while, actually. In the spring, I hired a contractor and repainted the dining room. The table where Vivian had made her toast was refinished, the old surface sanded away and replaced with something cleaner. I put the wedding china back. I kept the linen napkins. Some things were worth keeping. That summer, Daniel and I started a tradition. Every Sunday morning he drives to my house and we have breakfast, nothing elaborate, eggs and toast and coffee. The kind of meal that doesn't require any performance from anyone. Sometimes we talk about what's happening in his work. Sometimes I tell him about things I'm reading. Sometimes we just sit on the porch and watch the garden. Gerald had planted roses along the back fence many years ago. They had been blooming in his absence all this time, patient and quietly reliable, the way the best things tend to be. I told Daniel once, on one of those Sunday mornings, that I had been afraid the night after Thanksgiving. Not of what Vivian might do, of whether I had waited too long, of whether, in trying not to cause trouble, I had caused more of it. He said, You didn't wait too long. You knew exactly when to move. Maybe he was right. Or maybe timing is less a matter of skill than of finally understanding that the moment to stand up for yourself was always there. You were simply waiting until you were certain you wouldn't miss. I don't wait anymore. If this story resonated with you, I would love to hear from you in the comments. What would you have done at that dinner table? Have you ever had to stand up to someone who underestimated you? Your stories matter more than you know. And I read every single one. Drop your city in the comments and tell me where in this country or in this world you're watching from today.